The title of our session is Cities Through Younger Eyes. My name's Dinah Bornat, and I'm going to be joined today by a really interesting group of people from across the country who are working with young people in quite different ways, actually, to give them a greater voice in how to shape the built environment. And I think it's true to say that involving young people in the changes we make to the city around them isn't mainstream. So it's interesting to see how everyone here has got a rather unique approach. And that's something I want to come back to in the question and answer session later. So myself, I'm an architect. I'm working in private practice. I work on a range of projects from the very small to large pieces of city. And I'm fascinated about how we can make a connection between young people's lives and the places that we design. So I'm an architect who's a master planner, an urban designer, and a youth engagement specialist. And I'm also a mayor's design advocate for the Mayor of London and a researcher and various other roles alongside. The first speaker will be Jo Harrop. Jo runs Placed, which she set up in 2011. It's a social enterprise based in Liverpool and working across the Northwest and beyond. Jo's presenting with Lilia Hakem, Lola McLaughlin and Charlie Mason, who will have all participated in the Placed Digital Academy for young people aged 14 to 18. Having a look at Placed's website, I can see an old friend of mine, Louise Potter, who is one of their volunteer ambassadors. And I can also see that they have worked with over 21,000 young people, which is a pretty impressive statistic. Jo's background in architecture, regeneration and education means that she's well placed to be carrying out engagement with communities and particularly young people. Sharon Strutt will be our next speaker. She's head of regeneration at the London Borough of Redbridge. She's over 10 years experience developing spatial strategies for growth and regeneration, working as head of service in North and East London. She's recently led on the production of the borough's Growth Commission, Growing Redbridge Together, and right now is leading the regeneration of Ilford Town Centre. Luke Billingham is going to be presenting with Shanique. Luke is a youth and community worker at Hackney Quest, which is a long-running youth and community centre in the Homerton area of Hackney. Luke has his fingers in a lot of pies. His bio says that he's involved in mentoring, exclusion prevention, youth voice and community development projects. He has also managed to draw the whole borough together around his passion for moogers or sports cages, making sure everyone knows how important they are for young people and using that passion to champion more good work. He works part-time at Hackney Quest and also at Reach Children's Hub in Feltham. What he doesn't know about being a young person in Hackney, you could probably write on the back of a stamp. Shanique is a recent architecture graduate and has worked with Build Up on youth-led building projects. She's passionate about engaging more of the local community and youth in projects that impact their area. She teaches art and enjoys pursuing various design-related activities in her free time. Sana Tabassum is also a recent architecture graduate and based in London. Since she graduated and alongside her day job, she's founded To Scale, an architecture blog and platform for students and young designers. It's a great resource and something I would have really liked at my fingertips when I was starting out in the profession. Her bio says she has led a team to self-publish an architecture magazine, has hosted over 75 blog posts on her site and recently curated the world's first architecture convention. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to our first speaker, Jo, and then once each of our speakers have had their slot, we're going to have a panel discussion, and then following that, we're going to have a Q&A session. So please, if you have any questions, audience, can you pop them in the Q&A box? So that's at the bottom of your screen, rather than the chat. So we've got them all collected in the same space. And then I can pull those out at the end, towards the end, and we can have questions. I will talk your questions to the panel. Fantastic. Over to you, Jo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And how funny you know Louise. It's a small world. I'm Jo Harrop from Placed, and we're primarily up in the Northwest. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the work that we do and why we involve young people through our programmes and how we do that in terms of the built environment. So Placed through a social enterprise, and we're committed to diversifying voices in the built environment. So that's fundamentally what we want to do, is change it from being the norm, and the sort of make sure that we get a much broader audience involved in having their voices heard. We believe everyone's an expert. It doesn't matter if you're a 5-year-old or you're a chief exec of a local authority, you're an expert, you've just got a different set of experiences to bring, and it's how we can bring that together. For us, it's about creative engagement and creative education, and making sure that's open to all abilities, and also trying to bring people together to share their views and develop solutions rather than just identifying problems. So it's giving people the tools to do that, helping them on that journey, and engaging people on the same questions regardless of where they sit on that spectrum. And for us, the youth voice is absolutely critical in the conversation, but it's too often missing in terms of the design of our built environment. So in terms of young people, we have a specific education programme for young people really from year 3 upwards, and that we deliver in schools, so primary and secondary, and really within the school and college context. That's around giving young people an introduction to the built environment, making sure that they believe that their view matters, and actually they're completely entitled to talk about where they live and what they like and don't like. It's helping to support the curriculum and develop skill sets, and also introduce them to different careers that are available. In terms of engagement, whenever we're working on one of our engagement programs, we seek to involve young people in that. And also, I didn't mention, in terms of education, we run the Placed Academy, which is an outreach education programme for 14 to 18-year-olds who are potentially interested in built environment but want to hear more. So here's just a few programmes. As I say, everything's really, really hands-on. The Placed Academy is our sort of main outreach programme, which the first year was a 10-month-long programme for 14 to 18-year-olds. And in response to COVID, that's been digital. So we did 2 digital programmes last year. And this year we're running the Placed Environmental Academy. So it's going to have an environmental focus. And the young people are actually going to be doing engagement as well. So it's youth-led engagement and solution development in terms of how the built environment can better support climate, or better address climate change and have a positive impact. And as you can see, we also do lots of different ages and all very colourful. And what do we hear? It's a really timely invitation to do this. We had a conversation with a group of young people a couple of weeks ago about what they think some of the issues are in terms of being heard in terms of the built environment, and whether they're heard, and the problems that not having a voice creates. And these are some of the things that we were told by our young people. So they quite often feel an afterthought in the design of places, and that their views, even if they do share them, are not really valued. And as a result, they don't really belong into a set of spaces. So it might be, well, yes, the parks are accessible, but not necessarily always safe, or perhaps frowned upon because teenagers might be in a space seen to be fit for young children and families. There's a lot of issues in terms of stereotypes, or how young people feel are stereotypes within the built environment. So that doesn't matter if you are wearing certain clothes, if you're from different ethnic backgrounds, but young people feel very conscious of themselves when going into different spaces that are perhaps not their own neighbourhood, their own streets. A variety of space is a real issue, and access to a variety of spaces. So in particular, the sort of solutions are, well, we can go to the park, but actually that's not necessarily what everyone wants, and people want public spaces. They can't afford a cafe, so where do they go to meet their friends? They can't necessarily afford the transport to get between different neighbourhoods and visit their friends in different areas and cities, so they feel very isolated as a result. Concerns over safety, particularly with young girls and young women, which again is particularly relevant in the context of the last 2 weeks. But young girls saying actually they wouldn't really want to get on the train, on the bus, or go into the city because they just don't feel safe. They feel intimidated, and actually they'd like to see something change to address that. And there's a real interest in having their voices heard. And what was quite interesting from the conversation is what we heard through speaking to the young people is actually what we hear from so many other groups through our wider engagement work. That doesn't matter if we're talking about people who have a lower income threshold or people with addiction issues, carers, the whole range of people saying that they don't feel our cities are accessible for whatever reason, or they don't feel they belong in that city, or they don't feel very welcome. And it really resonated how similar the young people's issues were with many, many other sectors of society. So why involve young people? Very quickly, representational engagement. How can we create great places if we're not speaking to a representational group of people from that community? And through speaking to young people who, I have to say, have some of the most empathetic, holistic set of ideas that I've heard off anybody. They really do think about other people as well as their own needs. You can address issues around increased ownership and a pride in local communities by working with young people, and address some of those issues that are perceived to be around antisocial behaviour, young people causing problems and hanging around. And actually giving young people an ownership of those places can help address some of those, as well as create places that that young people want to stay, especially in the north with the talent drain down south. And they've got some brilliant ideas and really creative solutions, which are not always what I was expected, and real different aspirations. So climate change is consistently the priority for young people. And there's also a much broader change. So through involving people in the built environment, actually we can create active, empowered young citizens who believe their voice matters. And that is so fundamentally important. And alongside that, that process of engagement and learning about the environment, built environment really is so rich in terms of developing young people's knowledge, skills and confidence. And fundamentally, by working with young people, we can challenge some of those barriers, those misconceptions about who can succeed in the sector, and help to create a much more diverse sector, which has to be so important. So I'm going to hand over to three of our young people who've taken part in the Academy, who are just going to respond to the question which was on the event. So first, Lilia, if I hand over to you.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay, cool. So I'm an A-level student, and in response to the question, no, I don't actually. I don't feel like I've got a large input anyway, as if I hadn't come across Place Academy, the way my city is being shaped through commerce and the building of new apartments and business complexes to accommodate for its economic growth, is something that I wouldn't have considered. As how would you go about asking young people for input other than social media or focus groups or a young body or a panel who can amplify young voices to professionals? Personally, I think the largest impact designers can have positively for the young people is the reservation for large areas of green space and open space, particularly with benches that we can hang out in, especially now as shops and cafes are all closed. This is something we didn't anticipate. It's really highlighted the flaws in my city, where we realised we have to search for nooks and crannies for us to be able to relax and just hang out in, especially near good transport links. This is something I know many others my age feel the same about through discussions, and something a group of us agreed on through our architecture course when designing a new area.
And thank you, Lilia. And then Charlie.
Well, unfortunately, I don't really feel that I have much of a say in how my city is shaped, even though I think there's some really simple solutions of how we can make that happen. So I feel as though developers should be encouraged to have an aim of including young people in both discussions and consultations about new and future projects. I think something as simple as just surveys being sent to schools for students to complete could be really beneficial and simple at the same time. And if there were more groups like Place Academy, which I was lucky enough to be part of across the country, so if there was one in every city, more young people would both feel as though they understand the importance of being involved. And they also get to help with workshops and discussions which can really benefit their city and local area, and just in general feel connected with where they live.
Thank you, Charlie. And Lola?
Hello everyone, I hope you're all okay. So yeah, I wouldn't say that I really have had much involvement in shaping the city. The closest I've really come to actually having a say in how part of the city is shaped is during the Placed Academy course. Me and some other participants took part in a workshop to discuss our ideas about new potential builds in Liverpool, and we discussed what we believed would work well. We showed our final ideas to as a group to the panel. It was a really incredible experience. It definitely pushed me personally, knowing that this is actually something that I would love to take part in more often. And I'd really like to push for engagement because it's something I really believe in. I also believe as the younger generation, we should have a say in what our future is going to be like, because it's going to eventually be our homes that we live in, the shops that we shop at, the schools that we take our future children to. And if we don't have a say, it might be quite difficult in the future. The generations are changing so rapidly, whether it's in schools, colleges, or unis, we need to have a say in what goes into making our future. We should have that level of involvement given to us at a young age. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all from us.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody. I've been scribbling down lots and lots of questions. Our next speaker is Sharon. Sharon, over to you.
Hi, thank you. This is where I hope my screen works. Okay. Am I sharing? Nope. Oh.
Yes, you're sharing.
Yes, am I? Oh, good, because it's not showing on my screen. Is it the presentation?
Yes, it's there.
For some reason. Okay, I think I've had some technical issues. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Unicef UK child-friendly initiative that we have running in Redbridge and how we're trying to apply that to the regeneration of Ilford town centre. So the background to our programme in Redbridge, so of course Unicef UK programme is kind of wider than just London, of course. It's a UK-wide programme working with councils to put children's rights into practice and create cities and communities in the UK where all children and young people have a really meaningful say and can benefit from decisions and services that shape their lives. It's an enormous global initiative. So we've been working on this for some time now. As you'll see from the diagram on the right hand side of the slide, we've just passed the discovery stage. So this is the kind of 6-month stage where we all come together and start to agree priorities, and young people select the badges that they want to choose to work up through the development phase. And then we'll kind of work all of that through towards recognition, where we have an independent panel of experts that will assess the progress made and decide whether to award us as Unicef child friendly. So that's the pathway and the journey that we're on, but we're obviously at a relatively early stage there. So what does that mean for us in regeneration? And it's a great challenge, but the word challenge is absolutely in there. So this is about making sure we hear the voice of children and young people of all ages and the design and development of our public spaces. We look at the child's rights-based approach to delivery, making sure that the design and creation of our public spaces encourages children to play, feel safe, be healthy, move around freely, all of the things that we want as young people and as adults, but obviously we want to see it through the eyes of young people. The discovery phase that we went through included engagement with over 2,000 children and young people. So there's some very simple messages that we got from all of that. There are some places that they don't feel safe. I think that's not going to be a surprise in a London borough. There's obviously going to be places where people do and don't want to go, particularly evenings and sort of times of the day that make them feel not that they're not in such a safe place. They really value our open and green spaces. Redbridge, of course, is known for its green and open spaces. We've got a lot of parks, we've got a lot of really nice spaces, and our young people really want to protect that and see the value of them into the future. And equally, and I think this resonates from our previous young people that were speaking, they care about the new developments that are coming forward. Our borough hasn't seen perhaps as much growth as other parts of London. We're starting now to see the impact of new development coming in. So they want to know more about that and what that means for them. So what does that mean in terms of accessing affordable housing? How does that mean in terms of accessing space to play or just space to hang out? So there's lots of things that we're sort of starting to learn from our young people. So taking that into Ilford town centre, Ilford is our borough's largest regeneration opportunity. So it will take about a third of the borough's growth between now and 2030. Big sort of town centre, high street, location, used to be a place where it was all about shopping and retail, and of course as time goes by we're looking to create more of a livable town centre which will have many more homes and many more spaces to come and just do things, hang out, spend more time at the theatre or sort of enjoying entertainment and just sort of having more opportunities to do things that go beyond a usual shopping opportunity. So we did a lot of design work with children of all ages when we started our initial processes, but one of the comments I would make as we go through this is that we're good at talking to people in the early stages, and our biggest challenge is then turning that into practical actions and for young people seeing the input that they've actually had in the delivery of spaces. So our challenge is to look at Ilford Town Centre and know that we're a child-friendly borough. So that's the acid test for the borough for us. So again, they told us that they want places to feel safe, they want better lighting, they want access to Wi-Fi. Who doesn't these days? We're permanently connected, and somewhere to go if they feel threatened. So obviously the town centre has parts of it that feel very well lit and very open and very accessible, and other places that don't feel quite that way. We did some walkabout work with a charity called Living Streets, who invited groups of young people and families to just do a walkabout and kind of share with us what they thought about the environment from a slightly different perspective. And we've been using all of that as we're starting to look at our big clunky gyratory road system and how we can turn that into a much more simple design as a street that's got a lot more sort of walking and cycling features around to it. We worked with children from local primary schools to review our designs for play equipment in the town centre. So we've got a huge public realm transformation project going on in the town centre. And as part of that, we wanted to create a play street. And it seemed to us the most logical thing to do to actually talk to children and young people and involve them in the design of that play street. So we worked with them in some dedicated sessions pre-COVID. I think it's one of the last things we were able to do before we went into lockdown, to actually work with them in the school to design the equipment, have a look at where it should be located, the right kind of spaces in the town centre for locating our play equipment. So as we get to implement that, we'll be really keen to sort of test how they view that, and has it done what they wanted it to do. The Public Realm project has also given us another opportunity to work with secondary school children this time. They're working with a local artist called Sarah Hershey, who occupies our new artist studios in the middle of the town centre, and she's done some really great interactive work with secondary school children to design some of the etchings that are going to go into the floor in the paved areas in the floors of the high street. So a really great opportunity to engage young people, get their design ideas, help them to develop their skills more broadly as well, because of course there's also a learning and skills element in this as well. And again, there'll be designs that are actually used, so they'll see that legacy of their design input into the final public realm. And then, of course, you've got older children, and we should also be thinking, you know, with one eye on sort of apprenticeships and work opportunities. We have a really great jobs brokerage in Redbridge called Work Redbridge. Not only are they doing great work to try and get young people into employment through Kickstart, which of course focuses on young people from 16 to 24, but they've been actively getting young people, school leavers, into work as part of our regeneration projects. So one of our residential sort of developments, they managed to secure 5 young people apprenticeships as part of that contract. We've had successful pre-apprenticeship training with our public realm contractor Kensons, and you'll see the image there on the right hand side. One of those is now going on to do his civil engineer apprenticeship, and I'm told they've got a whole section of the paving that they're taking responsibility for just as the apprentices. So it's really great to see young people taking a physically active role and being paid for it as part of shaping our town centre. We've also placed people with new businesses coming in. So I mentioned Sarah, the artist from Space Studios. The image at the bottom there is a piece that she's created as part of that new artist studio that we've brought into what was formerly a part of our town hall building. And Space Studios are proactively looking to engage and to employ young people as part of having moved their operations into Ilford. And of course, we've got more coming. This forms the bedrock of everything that we're doing as we get new initiatives and new projects into the town centre to make sure that we're thinking about young people as part of that apprenticeship and that employment opportunity. But it's a journey. Oh, am I going over time?
You have gone over a little bit.
I'm so sorry. This is the last slide. We're on a journey. What can I say? We're nowhere near there yet. How can we make it more appealing? How can we get more people involved in decision making? And how can we make sure that more people benefit from growth in Redbridge? Sorry, I ran over.
That's all right. Thank you for accelerating. Luke and Shanique, over to you. Thanks, Sharon.
Sharon, could you please? Thank you.
Stop sharing. Yes, thank you.
Oh, it's telling me host disabled participant sharing. What shall I do about that? Ah, it's back on.
Back again. Yeah.
My apologies. There we go. Good evening, all. So my name's Luke, and I'm here with Shanique to tell you all about a project called Up Hackney. So Up Hackney was a collaborative project between Hackney Quest, which is the youth centre that I work for, and Up, who are a specialist youth construction charity who do projects all over London. And what we did was we got together 20 young people aged between 10 and 21 from local primary school, secondary school, local estates, local youth clubs. And we supported those young people to work together to design and then build a new public space in a prominent location in Hackney. So during the first half of 2019, we worked with the young people on designs. We kind of shortlisted the designs that the young people had developed. And then the final design included elements of ideas that each of the young people had come up with. And then during the summer, they physically built the space themselves, obviously with adult support. And the project was motivated by the findings of a report called Hackney Wick Through Young Eyes, which I led on at Hackney Quest. And the report showed that for a lot of young people, they felt like Hackney is changing very, very quickly, but they're not informed about, they're not involved in, and they're not benefiting from the way that the area is changing. And so this project was all about putting a prominent location in Hackney in the direct control of a team of young people to design and shape that space. And the project was co-led by two young people who were paid to act as young leaders on the project. One was Daniel and another one was Shanique, who's with me this evening. So I'll pass on to Shanique to tell you a little bit more about the project from her perspective.
So hi, my name is Shanique. So as Luke said, me and Daniel were both employed with Build Up and also Hackney Quest to work on this youth-led building project. So we worked with two schools from our local borough, because me and Daniel are both also from the borough as well. And we worked with them to come up with a design that they wanted to see in their local area. And something that was really quite impressive as well with the young people that we worked with is that when they were designing their area, they wanted to make sure that they were creating something for everyone. So this image you can see here was one of the initial stages that we had, where they were looking at, you know, what could they put in for the adults, what could they put in for themselves, what could they put in that their neighbors might want to see, things like that. So I would say me and Daniel's role possibly comprised mostly of supporting a lot of the young people. So that sometimes included trying to give them more confidence in doing things. Sometimes they didn't feel very confident in, for example, using power tools or building items and tools and things like that. They weren't really confident in doing that. And then giving them the confidence to let them know that they can actually do that they can actually build it, they can do all of these things. So this, you can see this image here, this is us going in together and building it, and them taking part in it as well after they've initially designed it. Yeah, which was really, really impressive. And so what I would say is they've taken quite a bit from the project. So as I just mentioned before, I think one of the things that they really took away from it was the fact that they were able to grow a lot more confidence. They felt a lot more able to make an impact in their area. And that's not something that they feel or they felt they could do, especially with the fact that a lot of them are below the age of 18, so they can't actually vote. So this gave them the opportunity to let them know that they could actually, you know, make an impact in their area. And so this was the finished product. And you can see that they painted it all as well. They've added benches in for everyone to use. And then on the next slide, you can see here as well, they thought about the different heights as well, things that adults can use, things that, you know, kids that are maybe smaller can sit on, and finding a way to make it really fun and impactful. And when they walk across this area that they built in their local community, they can feel really proud of themselves. So I'll pass back on to Luke to kind of wrap it up.
Thank you. So just to conclude, and building on what Shanique has said, what I hope that projects like Build Up Hackney contribute to is giving young people, and especially those from marginalized communities, a kind of world building power, a kind of world building confidence, the power and confidence to know that they can shape the world around them. And I think this kind of world building idea is captured well by two very different people, the entrepreneur Steve Jobs and the anthropologist David Graeber. So Steve Jobs first said, "When you grow up, you tend to get told that the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside the world. Try not to bash into the walls too much. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact. Everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it, you can influence it, you can build your own things that other people can use. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again." David Graeber put the same point a lot more pithily. He said, "The ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something that we make and could just as easily make differently." At present, of course, some people have a lot more control over how the world is made than others. Some people have a lot more world building power than others, particularly in a hideously unequal society like Britain. And so young people grow up surrounded by buildings, streets, ideas, traditions, social norms created by other people. and often people whose lives of privilege are nothing like theirs, usually older, white, wealthier men. Too many young people from places like Hackney, where I grew up, where Shanique grew up, where Daniel grew up, where all of these young people are from, are systematically belittled. They're not given the power or confidence to believe that they could ever reshape or rebuild the world. And that's what I hope child-friendly policies, projects like Build Up Hackney, and the other projects that you're hearing about today could help to address. We should be nurturing a younger generation of world builders. Thanks very much.
That's a very powerful statement to end on. Thank you, Luke, and thank you, Shanique. Our final speaker is Sana Tabassum. Sana, how are you doing? You ready?
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic.
So yeah, thanks for having me here. It's been an incredible experience listening to the previous speakers and the kind of works that they're doing. It's all very inspiring. Yeah, I think I'd start off with the fact that I recently read an article that described today's architecture as at a point of extreme uncertainty. And as I'm beginning my year out and at an architecture practice, I kind of agree. I've been put on furlough, projects have stopped or delayed, and no one really knows when a sense of normality will be in our sights again. But I think in my eyes, I feel like as if it's brought so many different communities together. So when thinking about shaping our cities for the future, I feel that the involvement of the people for who we design buildings is vital. By the time our designs actually get built, these spaces will be inhabited by the younger population, but we aren't even taking in their needs and ideas into consideration. So to give you a bit of background, I'm an architectural assistant on my year out in professional practice. I attended the University of Greenwich only a handful of years ago, but I came out feeling as if I didn't have the skills necessary to be employable. I had no work experience and wasn't particularly passionate about anything in particular. That's why I started my platform To Scale, which is where I share weekly articles on topics such as software tutorials, portfolio advice, and productivity tips for the average architecture student. But over the past year and a half, it's become more of a community platform. We've managed to self-publish our own magazine that highlighted the importance of community in architecture. And last month, I curated the world's first virtual architecture convention, where over 30 young content creators like myself held events to help students from around the world learn something new and engage with each other. So creators were essentially able to hold discussions about the state of the profession and how students can start building their personal brands and share their experiences of studying architecture online. At the core of this community is the idea that we're helping shape the next generation of architects. So more recently, we've been starting to question that path as the only road to success or being able to make a positive change in our cities. The unfair treatment of professionals in this industry who don't possess the coveted architect title has also started to come to light with the recent campaign by Future Architects Front. Students basically get trapped in the long process of being a qualified architect because practices require them to have a ridiculous amount of experience, which hinders them from achieving their full qualification. And I think something that's helped within that is the world of social media, which has expanded a lot over the past year. And as a whole, the digital world of architecture has just begun. We've seen a number of communities, initiatives, and content so far, and it's only just going to get better and bigger. I think younger people are sort of emerging from school and university with more skills than they realize, and it's only logical that we help them be an important part of our cities. There have also been many different organizations that are positively enhancing the industry and connecting with younger people. So for example, the People's Pavilion by Beyond the Box Consultants is an example of a collaborative project that brings together emerging creatives with London's youth community to design and curate cultural spaces. This is an example of how we can create a sense of inclusivity on several levels, bringing in the youth of our city to design the spaces around us and providing young professionals the opportunity to work on projects outside of typical practice. Another social enterprise, Activate the City, are also helping young people transform the spaces around their communities. They run workshops and projects that leave a long-lasting impact and equip creative individuals with the skills to address social and economic issues around them through design. I feel as if we need to not only support these kinds of initiatives, but actually begin to highlight the importance and impact on the architecture around us. One route could be to involve practices and companies with such projects and provide mentorship for young people looking to study architecture. I know that when I was applying to study architecture at university, my teachers, family, and friends weren't really sure about what the career entailed, including myself. But I think, if we can continue to teach younger students and give them a chance to learn and experiment with spaces, we can help shape the future generation of architects. So these are the people who are going to be living, working, and socializing in our city in the future. And I think architecture doesn't even need to be the be-all, end-all. In the distant future, we could have several technological advancements that allow us to build and design with ease, which some may say we'll be living in a world designed by AI and will have lost that sense of connection. But I feel as if the true craft is always related to the community within architecture, and that's something that can't be replaced. It's also a possibility that those starting off in architecture merely step off into other careers. That can be mentoring, film and media, and even YouTubing. I'm sure that many of you here have picked up a new hobby or interest, as we've all spent the most part of the last year in our homes. And who knows what the future of homes could actually entail. These hobbies and side hustles can actually turn into a fully fledged career, and the future architects of our city will undoubtedly have multiple skills that can provide the connections between community and design. So although the traditional and ideal identity of architecture may have changed in this pandemic, I believe that what follows will be a new wave of well thought out and interconnected design. It will take into account the safety of people living in these buildings, as well as whether we are all doing our part for climate change, and making sure that we don't put off younger people into the profession with a normalized behavior of all-nighters, pay gaps, and unpaid labor. So when thinking about the statement, today's architecture is at a point of extreme uncertainty, I think it could be framed as a good thing. Maybe we do want to solve the current issues and step into a new kind of architecture that's more inclusive and can actually provide us with a better city for the next generation. And it all starts with the people designing these spaces and how they view the industry as a whole. So we need to be starting to sort of making those changes and shaping our future. So yeah, thanks for listening, and thank you to the London Society for inviting me.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Sana. And it's great to have so many young people here. Can I ask all the panelists to switch on their cameras so we can just see everybody again? And perhaps we could go back into the gallery view. Is that possible, so you can see us all? Maybe I can do that. Ah, here we all are. Right. I've got a question to kick off. We've got another 14 minutes, and I've got a couple of questions in the Q&A. So anybody else would like to chuck their questions in, go for it. This is a really quick question. Put your hand up if you think we should lower the voting age. Okay. Lola, why did you not put, why do you think we shouldn't lower the voting age? I'd love to hear from you. What do you think?
I just think, I mean, I can understand why everyone's put their hands up, but I believe we don't learn enough about these people who we're voting for. So why should we be voting for them when I know people who don't even know what Brexit is? They don't know what's going on in the government right now. So unless we maybe potentially learn about it in school, why should we be voting for it at such a young age? If we learnt about it, then I would proceed to put my hand up with you all, but for now my hand stays down.
Okay, good answer. Charlie, why did you put your hand up?
Well, I think from talking to friends and things, we all have very strong views on the government, and I think across the country there are so many young people right now that would quite often disagree with our current status, sort of political status. And there are so many bills and laws that go through, whether they're environmental or social laws, that really go against lots of people's morals. I think especially the environment is a really important aspect that so many young people feel strongly about. And I have a feeling our government is not really doing all that they can at the moment to get that through.
So you've got a couple of ways of voting, haven't you? You've got central government, but you've also got local government. And up in Liverpool, you've got an interesting bit of politics going on at the moment, haven't you? And I guess my question to you, younger people who can't vote yet, would be, think if you thought about it the other way round, if you could vote, they might start talking to you. They might start suggesting that the festival site would be a child-friendly, young person-friendly place, because you would vote for them if that was one of the headlines, wouldn't it be? So I don't know. I think it's a really good point that you make, Lola, because, you know, what do you know? But also, I put it to you that quite a lot of people don't know what Brexit is either, and they're old enough to know better. So, but that's thanks. I'm not sure if everybody else in the attendees list is able to put in the chat and we can see it, but it'd be really interesting to see what everybody else thinks about lowering the voting age. I've got another question, and I think that image of the build up Flanders Way place, to me, says an awful lot of different things. I don't know if we can pop it up again for a second. Is it on your thing, Luke? The one that you ended on. It's actually empty, isn't it? But when I look at that photograph, and I remember what it was like before, I see a gathering place for young people, which is on a not very nice junction, as you can see, with lots and lots of traffic. So it's quite polluted. It wasn't a very nice bit of leftover open space. So kind of, it challenges a lot of things. Why gather there? Because it's not a big park. Why create a semicircular bench, and then just behind me is a swing as well, so that you can kind of chat and swing or play. Is this a space that works particularly well for young people? Shanique, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's actually worked really, really well. So that particular space is in between 2 to 3 schools. So right down at the far end of that image, the school is right there. So a lot of the kids will come out from the school and they'd play there. And sometimes the parents will come down as well, come down with the kids and play there. But the more interestingly as well is during the summer, when I walk past there, I don't just see kids there. Sometimes I see a lot of adults there as well that like to sit down in when it's really hot. And the pavement has actually been extended. So the council gave us extra space that we could extend it to. And while we were designing it, a lot of the kids were thinking about different ways that they could make it safe. So for example, the actual sleepers, the little barriers that you see that go around it, they were looking at the different distances that they need to put it to make sure that, you know, kids might not want to run into certain areas, things like that they were thinking about. And then the area following that path as well, making it more circular so that they can speak to their friends if they're sitting on one part of the bench or on another part of the bench. And also thinking about the swings at the back. You can't quite see on this image, but at the back they were looking at, you know, the different materials that they should be using so that the kids don't hurt themselves. And these are things that, you know, kids as young as 13 were thinking about. So I do think it has worked quite well. And I think they're really, really proud of what they've created.
So they've designed a space that works for them, and then they're thinking about other people and it's working for other people. Joe, do you think young people use space differently to other age groups?
Partly from being forced to. I think the options are really limited when you're a teenager, particularly. You know, you don't have a lot of choice out there. You don't have the money. You want independence. You're in that limbo, so you don't want to be with your family all the time, but you want to feel safe. And so I think the set of challenges that young people face in using space are quite specific. And so to some extent they do use space differently, but I don't think it's necessarily unique to young people. I think it's just a set of circumstances that forces them into using certain spaces to socialize, to have time with friends, to do normal human things that as an adult you might go to the pub in normal circumstances, or you might, you know, there's just the options are really, really limited. And so, you know, young people get this bad reputation for hanging around in places that they've created that we've just looked at, and it's like, well, we don't want to put benches there because young people will hang around. And is that such a bad thing?
Well, I think that's a good point, and which leads me on very nicely to the next question. This hanging around thing, Luke. Do you think this is a question for one of the audience? Do you think young people understand that they may look threatening to older strangers going about their business?
Yeah, I think they're incredibly aware of it, and I think that all too often young people are somewhat paralyzed by their perception of how other people might view them, and they're constantly aware of being surveilled or monitored or supervised or told off or moved along. And I think if we've created more inclusive spaces where people of all different age groups could kind of cohabit more positively, then it would undermine that kind of potential mutual suspicion that we see. In the research we did, the Hackney Quest for Young Eyes research, one of the most interesting little quotes was a 16-year-old who was talking about all the kind of basically like more hipstery, yuppie-ish people moving into Hackney. And she said that when she sees them, she thinks, they look kind of cool, because often like trendy, they got cool clothes on. But she said that she thinks that when they look back at her, they think, there's a troublemaker. And obviously she hasn't spoken to these people. So it's interesting in itself that they might think that she's a troublemaker, but it's also interesting that that's her perception. That's how she feels that she's viewed by others. So I think that young people are often highly aware of being viewed negatively by others. And I think what most people want in general is just a greater degree of kind of mutual trust and mutual understanding. And one thing that can help that is places being designed better for people to cohabit them together.
I've got a question I'm going to ask for you in a minute, Sharon, but before I ask you, Sana, there's something interesting about the whole child-friendly cities discussion that we've been having. And there's a kind of legal age, isn't there? When you're 18, you're not a child anymore, you're an adult. And it's quite a seems like quite a kind of clear line. You wake up one morning and suddenly you have everything available to you. It's not really the case, is it? Do you think that there's a way in which we need to be more aware of that, what do you call it, transition, support? What do things do you have in common with younger people under 18 and older than you? How do you sit in that zone in between, so to speak, and what's particular about that?
I think yeah, you're right. I think, you know, the transition from actually becoming sort of an older teenager to a sort of adult, I think that's sort of it's unique to each person. And I think you know, it's kind of difficult to sort of, you know, just say, okay, you're 18, you can sort of go do whatever you like. But I think the way that we sort of shape our cities for younger people, it should be really done by younger people. I think they're more than sort of capable of doing so. And that's been highlighted through the projects we've seen. And I think, you know, personally, you know, being at school and stuff, it was difficult for me just to, you know, go out, you know, after school and just hang around somewhere. There was no spaces like that. So I think what people are doing is, you know, in architecture is just kind of bringing in those kind of spaces for the younger people. So yeah, I think that's what we need to be doing more.
Thank you. You don't think is there any extent that your age group might be kind of held back, infantilized, not treated properly as adults? You sort of talked a little bit about how you know, and social media might be helping you get a voice, right? Right,
yeah. I think, you know, as a whole, you know, obviously since the pandemic's begun, everyone sort of moved online into this digital world. So I think people are sort of kind of forgetting, in a sense, that, you know, these are younger people doing these sort of things, but actually social media can help give that platform for younger students as well, and help them sort of, you know, put themselves out there without having to sort of fight for, you know, their voice, really.
Sharon, what you've just heard from is quite varied, isn't it? Well, not varied, it's really broad, isn't it? From all the needs of young, there's no children, small children around the table. But how does this translate into like a policy at a local authority level where you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people? For example, what's the percentage of young people, young people in your borough? Is it something like 25% or something? How does all of this translate into sort of major strategy without it just being kind of bullet points? And
I suppose it's about embedding it into everything we do, which sounds very trite and very simplistic, but actually that's what makes it really challenging and really hard. So from a council policy perspective, in fact, one of the things we've now finally introduced is making sure that every time a report goes up for consideration by the council, it has to consider the child-friendly impact of that. So that has a direct bearing on all of the decisions that the council is making, because we have to consider it through that child-friendly approach as well. What is this doing to further promote our child-friendly ambitions? And that's now got to be in absolutely everything that we do. The intro that you gave me up front about the Growth Commission was really fascinating, because we got to engage with a lot of younger people. I think for what Sana's just said, being able to move things online was a big bonus for us, being able to engage with people, because it suddenly meant we could engage with people that weren't so happy to turn up at a hall in the middle of a rainy, evening to come and listen to people talk, have a consultation. It was more about being able to use a much more user-friendly set of online tools to hear views, engage views from people, and get a much more interactive response and hear from them about the things that they want to do. Our biggest challenge is now implementing that, making sure that the things that we hear and we've heard repeatedly are translated into actions, and not just us translating things into actions for young people, but with them.
Brilliant, thanks, Sharon. We are at 7:30, and before we go, I want to give the last words to the young people who are, I think we should all say we're really grateful for you coming along, and I think particularly because we've all got access to Grind. This is our day job, but for you, this is putting yourself out there amongst a group of adults. Lilia, is there anything you'd like to reflect back on that you think you've heard today that's been interesting? Any way you would challenge us, or what do you think in terms of what you've heard today?
I certainly think it's been a really interesting, quite a productive conversation, certainly. I wouldn't say I challenge anything, but I certainly think that there's been a lot of really productive points raised, and the fact that we're having this really constructive webinar sort of situation is one step in the right direction. Myself and 2 other young people are involved, and I think that that's really beneficial, because we've managed to share our views and how we feel about this. And yeah, so I think from here, if our views are then taken into consideration and we see more open spaces mainly, then that's something that I feel would be quite purposeful from this.
Thanks, Lilia. I've got something I thought of the other day. When you do visuals, architects, I think there's lots of architects in the audience, of new schemes, make sure you put young people in them, because if you show young people an image of a new space and they're not in the picture, no wonder they don't feel like they're going to be there. You have a look around, you'll see lots of small children, lots of parents with children, but you won't see any of those great hulking teenagers with black hoodies on like my son has right now, and that's what they look like. They have a particular look about them, girls and boys, and they need to be in the picture. Lola, Charlie, have you got anything else you want to add to that before we go?
Yeah, I just guess to add to what Lily said, I'm in total agreement. There's nothing I exactly challenge with it. It's just to reinforce the thing that it's so important to always look from a young, well, not always, but to make sure you're looking from the perspective of a young person, whether you're designing something new or creating a new space. You can't just look from an adult's perspective. It has to be from young people, whether that's children or teenagers. It's such a vital part of creating these new spaces.
Brilliant. And how about you, Lola?
Completely everything those two have just said. That you nailed it on the head there, guys. But I want to say, Luke, and I think it's Shanique, the idea that you guys came up with to do that with the children, that made my heart melt. Like, I wish someone had done that for me. And there's not many opportunities for young people to do this kind of thing. And I just wanted to say thank you, because I never thought, I certainly, like, not for a year, I would have thought, why am I here? But I just feel so professional, and I thank you for this opportunity to Placed and everyone here. It's incredible. I feel like a bit emotional, but I don't know why. But I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I think that's brought us to the end, and I think I don't know if anyone else got anything else to say, but shout now, or I think we will have our Zoom ended. It's been really interesting. We could talk for hours about this, and it's been great to meet everybody. Have a really good evening. Cheers. Bye.